Hey everyone, this is D-Vyne. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this video. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get into it. For over 2 decades, singer and songwriter Avant has taken the music industry by storm, consistently giving us quality, authentic R&B music, with 7 of his 9 albums being featured in the top 10 of the R&B hip-hop albums charts. With hits like Separated, Making Good Love, and Read Your Mind, he has become known as a provider of mature, feel-good, slow jams. Avant's talent and drive are undeniable, and although R&B has transformed over the years, his music can still make you feel all the things that you felt the first time you played it. Although he's experienced many ups and downs throughout his life and career, he's managed to persist in the music industry. Avant was born Myron Lavelle Avant on April 26, 1978 in Cleveland, Ohio. He was raised by his mother, Alberta Avant, and was one of 6 children. While growing up, he watched his mother work long hours at a local telephone company to give her children the best that she could on her own, but things were never that easy. Alberta raised her children in the church, encouraging Avant to sing in the choir of the now closed Union Hill Baptist Church. It was during this time that he first realized his love for singing. At home, she introduced him to classic artists like the Supremes, Smokey Robinson, Marvin Gaye, and his uncle also had a singing group that used to perform in their basement. His mother would have him clean up after their performances, and as he listened to them perform, he grew to admire his uncle's talent. One day, his uncle overheard him singing a little and pulled him aside. He told him that he had what it took to be a successful artist someday. These words meant a lot to him coming from someone he admired so much. Now, his father wasn't consistent in his life, leaving his mother to pick up a lot of the slack. Because of his own experiences as a child, Avant resolved to be a present father later on in life. Regardless, he did have many fond memories with his father, who would take him for rides in his pickup truck. During those rides, he'd play blues acts like Johnny Taylor, explaining to his son that this type of music meant a lot to him and that music should mean something to its listeners. These words stayed with him throughout his career. He started writing his own songs at the age of 14. While attending the Cleveland School of the Arts, where he studied music and drama, he developed an interest in acting, and this became one of his many pursuits. He won numerous local talent shows, including the Cleveland Black Expo. Shortly after graduating from high school in 1995, he worked as an assembly line worker in a peanut factory. This monotonous job gave him a lot of time to think about his life and his future. Growing up in a tough neighborhood right around the corner from the projects, he knew that he didn't want that kind of life forever. And so he had to find a way out of it, and he realized that music could be that way. He formed a singing group called the Fellas in high school, and it really helped to build his confidence as a performer. He had a manager at the time who got them in the studio, and when Avant heard a recording of his voice for the first time, that was a very exciting moment for him. He spent a lot of time in the studio working on music, catching the attention of the studio's owner, Tony Respress, who told him that he stood out from the rest of the group and that he would do so much better as a solo artist. He started working on his own music with local producers, and his efforts soon paid off as he caught the attention of R. Kelly's manager at the time, Eric Payton, who wanted to sign Avant right away. Payton saw a lot in Avant and encouraged him that he had a better chance being a solo act. However, Avant needed to move to Chicago, which was a big change for him as he'd never really left Ohio before. He introduced him to producer Steve Huff, and the two started writing songs together. Now, over the years, Avant had written quite a few songs as well, so he worked with Huff on perfecting these songs. Now, one of the songs they worked on together, called I Wanna Know, was released independently and became a regional hit in the Chicago area, getting airplay at radio stations like WGCI. This track helped him to secure his first record deal with Magic Johnson Music, owned by former LA Lakers basketball star Magic Johnson, which was a subsidiary of MCA Records, and they decided to make him their debut artist. At the time, there was already an R&B artist by the name of Myron, so in order to avoid any confusion, he decided to go by his last name Avant professionally. In an interview with Billboard, Avant explained that patience and persistence were the key to his success. His entry into the music industry wasn't easy. He tried for more than 6 years, and finally he managed to get the attention of Magic Johnson's label, and that really is where things started to take off for him. At that time, there were already so many talented R&B artists like R. Kelly, Babyface, D'Angelo. I can name quite a few others. So Avant really had to come good to compete with these talented singers. With his newfound success and attention came constant comparisons to singer R. Kelly. He faced backlash from critics who claimed that he stole R. Kelly's sound. Although the criticisms did trouble him, he never shied away from the issue, expressing that the comparisons were an honor. Instead, he tried to focus on letting the people know who he was as an artist. I feel like there's always a point of reference for artists though. Yeah, some manage to have a more unique sound, but at the same time, a similar artist might eventually come along, and that's okay. Avant has shown a lot of respect and given credit to his musical influences. People are entitled to their opinions, but the way he was hounded was a bit overkill. He is undeniably a talented songwriter and singer, managing to make good music without the need for graphic lyrics and imagery. Many artists can't say that they've had the same level of consistency that Avant has. Under MCA, Avant released the single Separated in April 2000. It was co-written by Avant and Huff, and it was inspired by Avant's relationship with his first true love that ended in heartbreak. He wore his heart on his sleeve and got burned for it. Now, Huff was also going through a divorce at the time it was written, so he was in a dark place as well, which the song reflected. At first, Avant thought that no one would want to listen to him singing about his heartache and pain, but his manager told him that this was exactly what people wanted to hear. When the song dropped and fans were giving it a lot of love, he quickly realized that people did want to hear what they were going through. It was a little like therapy for listeners and for him as well. Separated topped the R&B hip-hop charts, its success leading to the release of his full-length debut album, My Thoughts, in May 2000. He followed that up with the release of his second single, My First Love, which featured powerhouse vocalist Keke Wyatt. It was a remake of the 1983 ballad done by R&B duo Renee and Angela. Back in 1983, the original performed very well, giving the duo their biggest hit up until that point. When Avant covered the song along with Keke, it brought that song right back to the charts in 2000. It featured in the top 10 on the R&B charts, peaking at 26 on the pop charts, and was also certified platinum. After a successful debut, Avant's growing fan base were eager for the release of his sophomore album. At this point, he was struggling a lot with his label. It was hard to even get them to approve his releases. They couldn't agree on what was going to be a hit record, so his team decided to just leak the music and let the public decide, sending his single, Making Good Love, out to the radio stations. The fans ate it up, so MCA grudgingly approved the official release as a single in 2001. His sophomore album, Ecstasy, was released in March 2002, debuting at number 6 on the US Billboard 200 and number 2 on the top R&B hip-hop albums charts. It was well received by critics and the general public, especially Making Good Love, which gave Avant his third top 10 hit. This would be the final album officially released under MCA Records, as it was absorbed by Geffen Records. After the success of Ecstasy, Avant really started to reap the fruits of his labor, which allowed him to do a lot more for his mom and his siblings, which is one of the things that he always wanted to be able to do, to just help his family. He was also being contacted by some of the producers he used to work with on his earlier music. They felt like as he became more successful, he kind of left them behind and they didn't really get the credit that they felt they deserved for contributing to his initial rise in the industry. His third album, Private Room, was released in December 2003, reaching number 4 on Billboard's top R&B hip-hop albums chart. Its lead single, Read Your Mind, was another huge hit for Avant, featuring in the top 10 on the Billboard Hot R&B Hip Hop Songs chart and even managing to cross over into Billboard's pop charts. It was no surprise when the album was certified gold. Similar to his experience with Ecstasy, Avant experienced a lot of pushback from his label with Private Room. The label didn't really put much effort into Magic's artists. They were focusing on their own artists, and so their subsidiaries weren't being prioritized. Once again, Avant and his team took matters into their own hands and leaked Read Your Mind, which he conceptualized after meeting the eyes of a very attractive woman from across the room at a nightclub. The following year, year, Avant made his acting debut with a cameo appearance in the 2004 feature film Barbershop 2, Back in Business. He reunited with Keke Wyatt to record a cover of Ashford and Simpson's track Your Precious Love, which was then featured on the film's soundtrack. The following year, his hit single Read Your Mind was featured on the soundtrack for the film Coach Carter. After MCA was absorbed by Geffen, there were a lot of changes happening within the label. It was almost like he had to prove himself all over again because there was completely new management, so he was dealing with a completely different label basically. Avant decided that he needed new representation going forward to handle the transition, so he cut ties with Eric Payton, his then manager, and Steve Huff, his longtime collaborator. Huff has expressed that he had no hard feelings about this because he felt that now that Avant had matured as an artist, he needed to work with other producers as well. In April 2006, he released his fourth album, Director, which didn't lose any momentum from his previous successes. In fact, it topped the R&B hip-hop albums charts and debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200. Its most successful single, 4 Minutes, featured in the top 10 on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs chart. My personal favorite from this album is Lie About Us, featuring Nicole Scherzinger. Now, I can't necessarily relate to the subject matter, but it still felt like I had a hidden man somewhere fighting for love. He had me reminiscing about things I didn't even experience. It's a solid track, really chill and catchy, but I feel like Avant is known for that type of vibe. However, this single didn't perform as well commercially in the US, which perplexes me. After 4 Minutes, he didn't really produce any other major hits. So Geffen ultimately decided to part ways with Avant. He was dropped from the label, and I don't think this was very surprising to him at that point because of how Geffen was treating him. So it was probably a welcomed change. In 2007, it was announced that he signed a new deal with Capitol Records under Universal Music Group. Before that, he talked about shopping around for a new label. At some point, he was in talks with Diddy, among others. At the time, he explained that he felt Capitol was dedicated to pushing their resources for his projects. He released his self-titled 5th album in December 2008, featured in the top 10 on the R&B hip-hop albums charts, but he soon left Capitol, signing to Verve Forecast under Universal Music Group. Capitol had been going through their own changes, and as a more mature artist, Avant felt like he couldn't just wait around for them to get themselves together and figure out how to work with him, or for him to figure out how to work with them. He wanted things to move a lot faster, and it just wasn't working out with them. 2 years after the release of his 5th album, he dropped his 6th studio album, The Letter, which failed to produce any top 10 hits, becoming known as his lowest charting album to date. And I mean, that must have been pretty discouraging for him after getting used to charting consistently over the years. To go from having guaranteed chart-topping albums to doing so poorly on the charts, despite being such a talented artist, was huge change for him. It's not that he lacked the talent. He had already proven that on his previous albums. He's a very talented songwriter and singer. These last few albums just didn't produce any hits. Maybe it was the lack of Steve Huff, who worked a lot of magic with Avant on his previous album. Now in 2019, Avant appeared in a musical called Love in the Nick of Time, which he really seemed to enjoy based on his performance. He also decided to become an independent artist. I'm sure after all of his experiences with different labels over the years, this seemed like the best decision for him at that time. I don't know what else to say, but peace of mind is a hell of a thing. Being an independent artist would definitely give him more control over his career and decisions surrounding his music. Now, would this guarantee chart-topping albums? Definitely not. But there is something to be said for having more control over your life and your career. So he started his own label, Moby Entertainment, which he launched in 2013 with the release of his 7th album, Face the Music. He reunited once again with Keke on the song You and I, which peaked at number 1 on the adult R&B songs charts, but didn't make much of an impact on the Billboard Hot 100. He followed that up with the release of The 8 in 2015, which featured in the top 10 on the R&B hip-hop charts, giving Avant his 7th feature on this chart. That's a pretty big achievement and really shows how consistent he is with the quality of his music. I just feel that although R&B is still very much relevant and loved by fans, there has been a shift in the genre, and Avant has actually commented on that in interviews before. And as time has passed, R&B music started going through some changes, and it seemed that there was no longer space for artists like Avant when the subject matter being addressed in the industry shifted. He felt like when he listened to R&B music now on the radio, it's like he keeps hearing the same song over and over. Every new artist is trying to sound like whoever is big in the industry right now. So he felt like R&B is just lacking the authenticity it had back in the day. Although he continued to make good music, he just felt drained and unappreciated. So he decided to take an extended break, and he was out of the studio for about 5 years. By the time he started working on his 9th album, he was so energized to get back into the studio after taking such a long break. Avant isn't too concerned with keeping up with whoever is big right now. He knows he has an audience that looks forward to hearing what he has to offer, and he just wants to continue making quality music for his fans. So obviously that extended break he took helped to put some things into perspective for him, and he came back with a fresh new mindset to continue working on music. In 2019, he dropped the track Not Gonna Lose. He finally released his 9th album, Can We Fall in Love, in July 2020. Around the same time that he dropped Not Gonna Lose, rumors started circulating that he had 6 months left to live due to lupus, with numerous web sources posting a statement that was allegedly written by his publicist to back up their claims. Because of this, many of his fans thought that there wouldn't even be a 9th album. Thankfully, that was just a horrible rumor. We all know the internet can get a bit carried away sometimes, and while it was possible that he was sick, it's disgusting that someone went as far as to fabricate a statement just for some clicks. He confirmed during an interview that he is not suffering from lupus. He stopped eating meat because of a nerve issue, but besides that, he was doing well. He had dropped a substantial amount of weight initially, so I guess people probably interpreted that as a serious illness. If there is more going on, Avant will let the world know when he's ready, I'm sure. But for now, he says he's not ill. We'll take him at his word. Currently, he's just continuing to work on his music, which he's still very passionate about. He's also focused on being a father to his 2 children, his son Chase and daughter Milan. He tries to give his children all that he didn't get from his father, which we talked about earlier. He made a promise to himself when he was much younger that he wanted to be a present father for his children in the future, and it appears that he is a man of his word. He also likes to protect the privacy of his children, and so he doesn't put them out there for public consumption, which I can understand and respect. But hopefully we can continue to look out for more good music from Avant going forward. I'm curious to know what you guys think, so drop a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video. Until next time.